Now, many of you may know that one of the things I love doing is designing and creating things. So this year I had an idea. How about if I came up with something that would save everybody money and at the same time get rid of all the hassle of going out to find appropriate cards for all your friends and relatives at Christmas? So, my idea was this: simply to design the best Christmas card there's ever been. It would have to include all that is good, all the stuff that makes Christmas what it is, of course, but most importantly, genuinely get to the heart of what Christmas is all about. And the beauty of the idea is that if the card really is perfect, there will be no point in having any other cards at all. Everyone can just send the same one. So that saves money through bulk buying and also removes the need to go through countless other options to find anything better or more appropriate, because there won't be anything. Genius, eh? So that's what I did. I came up with my design, saved it to my computer, and then went to bed for a well-earned rest. Now, later that night, I had the strangest dream. At least I think it was a dream. I dreamt that when I'd finished my design, I'd posted a picture of my card on Facebook just to see how many likes it would get. Nothing strange about that, right? We've all done it. But in the event, I have to say, I was rather disappointed. It didn't get nearly as many likes as I had expected. In fact, it didn't get any. What it did get were lots of comments telling me how I'd got it all wrong and what I should do to correct it. Although I half knew all along it was just a dream, I was still really upset because clearly none of them knew what they were talking about. So I thought maybe if I showed you my card, then perhaps you'd understand why I was so upset and why I was right and those intruders into my dream were wrong. Anyway, this is it. Good, huh? Plenty of action, lots of excitement, all your Christmas favourites. What's not to like? Well, the first complaint I had was about the sign. They didn't like the X. Now, I assumed it was because X used to be Twitter, so perhaps what they were claiming is that I'm actually saying Merry Twittermas. I'll accept that's probably not appropriate. But then I heard a voice. Not a frightening voice, but the sort you couldn't ignore if you tried. Like your mother's, if you know what I mean. Anyway, this voice said, "You've got to lose the X. I really, really don't like the X. It's got nothing to do with Twittermas. It's because you're crossing Christ out of Christmas. Without the Christ, it can't be Christmas." And with that, the sign just sort of faded away. And the voice continued, "While we're on the subject, what's with the candle? You surely can't think it's a good idea to have a naked flame in a place which is packed with straw and stuff." I tried to argue that it's only a little candle, and anyway it looked very pretty, but it was no good. It still disappeared. I tried to console myself with the fact that I still had the holly to keep the festive feeling alive, but apparently there wasn't any in Bethlehem in Jesus' time, so yes, you've guessed it, that went too. "I like the lights, though," continued the voice. "What powers them?" "Duh, electricity. What else?" "Did they have that in the stable then? Or perhaps they used Duracell batteries?" I started to protest that sarcasm was the lowest form of wit, but it fell on deaf ears. So out went the lights. "Surely," I said, "the robin's okay, though. I mean, there's always a robin on a Christmas card, isn't there?" "Oh, I love robins," came the reply. "I love all birds. That's why I made them. But not mentioned in the Bible and never seen in Israel, so perhaps we should set him free. What do you think?" As I opened my mouth to protest, the voice went on, "And by the way, the snowman wouldn't be inside a stable, and it almost never snows in Bethlehem anyway." "Oh yes, and Christmas trees were an invention of the Victorians, so they're hardly traditional, are they?" At this point, my mouth was opening and shutting like a goldfish, but no sensible sounds were coming out. I managed to splutter something about presents at least fitting in well with the whole message of Christmas, but the adamant reply was that the whole point of Christmas was not about getting loads of gifts, and was even less about seeing if you then ended up with more than the person next to you. So if you don't get any presents this year, guess what happened to them? During all this time, comments were still pinging up, so I thought I'd avoid listening to that voice by looking at those. Somebody who's obviously one of those Bible bashers insists that the wise men didn't arrive until Jesus was about 2, which was news to me, and to the people who write the carols, I would imagine. So I could guess what was going to happen. Yep, there they go. Did you ever watch Call the Midwife? Yeah, well, there was somebody who clearly watches that program who posted that it doesn't matter whether Jesus was born in a place where the animals live. They would definitely have been put outside before the birth took place. So it's goodbye to the cow. Surely that's a hat I recognise, isn't it? Could that be a certain person in disguise? Anyway, away he goes. And the donkeys. And the sheep. And I guess if there are no sheep, then we don't really need the shepherds. I guess they're not important anyway. It's not as if they're an integral part of the story, is it? So, Joseph and Mary. Now look, I tried to keep them. I really did. I argued the point until I was blue in the face, but they wouldn't have it. They said it's called Christmas, not Joseph and Marymas. So, sorry guys, you've got to go. It was the last post I received, which was the most frightening thing of all. You're not going to believe this, but when I based this whole thing in a stable, they said that was wrong. They reckoned that Jesus was actually born in the downstairs of a house, in the part where the animals lived. Not a stable like we see out in the country. So, guess what? No stable. Oh, and that's not all. The voice was back. He wasn't content with moaning about all the things I put in, which he said I shouldn't. He even had the cheek to tell me I'd missed something out. As if. I put in everything I could possibly think of. But no, he insisted. You've got to have a light, he said. A star shining down. So there we are. That's all I ended up with. A little baby and a light. How can that possibly be the real message of Christmas? How can that image fully contain the magic and the mystery and the importance of something that happened over 2,000 years ago in a country far away from here? And it was at that point I woke up. I have to say I was really relieved to discover that it had all been a bad dream. Bit of a nightmare, really. But it did get me thinking. I have to admit, all those things that disappeared in my dream are fun things to have around at Christmas, as decorations or aids to the Christmas spirit, perhaps. But when you get right down to it, they are not what Christmas is all about. The whole wonder and truth and miracle of the Christmas message is centered right on that little baby, on Jesus. Because on that amazing night in Bethlehem, God became man. God was born as a helpless human baby. He did it in order to show people what he was like. He did it in order to remind them that he loved them. He did it because they had turned their backs on him and thought they could manage perfectly well without him. He did it because they had the burden of sin around their necks and no way to get rid of it, and what was worse, they weren't even aware of it. God could have come in power and might to force people to obey him, but he didn't. He came as a helpless human baby. He came not to be served, but as a servant. He came because this journey, which started in Bethlehem and ended at Jerusalem on a cross, was the only way we could be rescued from the clutches of sin. He came because he loved us. He came because he loves you, regardless of what you've done or who you are. The Bible confirms that. Here's what it says in the Message translation. This is how much God loved the world. He gave his Son, his one only Son. And this is why, so that no one need to be destroyed. By believing in him, anyone can have a whole and lasting life. God didn't go to all the trouble of sending his Son merely to point an accusing finger, telling the world how bad it was. He came to help, to put the world right again. And that is the whole message of Christmas, centered on that little baby in the manger. Jesus was born to be a light shining in the darkness, a light which would show us the direction to go in, and at the same time would wipe out the dark shadows of sin which weigh each one of us down. A light who would put things right again. Amen.